Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker. Each night, millions of people in the United States struggle to fall asleep or stay asleep. For some, this is only a brief problem, but for others, insomnia can become a severe, ongoing struggle. How common is insomnia among adults? Here are the numbers. 30 to 35% have brief symptoms of insomnia. 15 to 20% have a short-term insomnia disorder, which lasts less than 3 months. 10% have a chronic insomnia disorder, which occurs at least 3 times per week for at least 3 months. Chronic insomnia can have a negative impact on your health, increasing your risk of depression and high blood pressure. It can also lower your quality of life. Common symptoms of insomnia include fatigue, inability to focus or concentrate, poor memory, mood disturbance, daytime sleepiness, low motivation or energy, and increased errors and accidents. Our next guest is a featured guest here on Revealing the Truth and appears on the last Monday of every month at 12 o'clock p.m. It's Faith Blatchford, author of Winning the Battle for the Night, God's Plan for Sleep, Dreams, and Revelation. Faith is the founder and president of Age to Come, a nonprofit organization. She's an ordained minister, a graduate of Vassar College, holding a BA in religion. She travels in the United States and abroad, speaking in churches, schools, and conferences. She's an author as well as a producer of instrumental soaking CDs. Her goal is to be a catalyst for radically life-changing encounters with the presence of God, whether through preaching, teaching, prophesying, counseling, coaching, or impartation. She hosts This Sleep Project, Better Nights for Better Days, the last Monday of every month at 12 o'clock right here. You can find more about her at faithblatchford.com. Faith Blatchford, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you, Eric. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to see you. Glad that your California fires and all that mess that was going on out there, you were able to be safe from that. And
Yes.
although it came pretty close, didn't it?
Too close, but I'm very grateful I have a house.
Well, we're grateful for that as well. You know, this is a season that we're in, Faith, where we find ourselves to be just incredibly busy.
Yes.
Visions of sugar plums dancing in our heads are replaced with visions of shopping lists, gift lists, events, what we have to do, preparation, how to cook, recipes, where did I leave this, where did I leave that, who did I forget, where do I need to be, what do I need to be doing? And we would just call that generally a culture of busyness.
Yes.
What is that all about? And is this a culture or a season, or is it something that we attribute to a season, but we really live in a culture of busyness?
I think the last statement you made is probably more the truth. We might blame our busyness right now on, well, it's Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and so we have this 2 months or maybe even 3 of seasonal busyness. But I think part of the fact that it's so busy around the holidays is because we're familiar with being busy. It really is a culture, and I think it's probably more in the United States than in every other nation. Just doing a little bit of research on it, I didn't know this, but apparently in Europe, the stores are not open on the weekends. I mean, I can't even imagine not having stores open on the weekend. And we've become so used to 24/7. I mean, Walmart is open 24/7. And that sets the stage for this idea of continually being busy. And I don't think that it was God's intention, but now it's actually become a status symbol. You know, if somebody says, oh, you know, I'm not busy, you look at them like, well, you must be lazy. You must be just dropping the ball. And I'm sure all your friends are upset because you're letting them carry the load. And you just get to kick back and watch TV and read novels or whatever you do, or go fishing. But generally, busyness has become a status symbol, and it becomes identity connected, so that I see myself as being important and even valuable to God if I have this demeanor and this sense of being busy. But I don't think that that was always God's intention. And you look at Genesis, which is sort of the genesis of our identity as believers, and God worked really hard for 6 days, and then he rested. And I think if he needs rest, probably we need it even more, which is why this busyness culture and addiction, I don't think God is smiling on that. And I think he's provided a solution to it, which was the Sabbath, which I know you're really more familiar with probably than I am, and probably have practiced it more than I have. I'm just entering into this idea of rest, and maybe you would give us some insight on this biblical principle of rest.
Well, I want to take you on a little journey, because not only is it biblical from an Old Testament perspective, but it's very biblical from an understanding of the cross, and it's very important to understand the very words of Jesus. So let me start with the traditional aspects of God created the Sabbath. It is the fourth commandment. It is, he says, to honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. For 6 days you are to do your regular work. On the seventh day you are to cease from your regular work and rest. When we were in the wilderness, he provided fresh manna for us every day. And on the 6th day, we got a double portion so that we could take that 7th day and rest. Now, this wasn't rest where we just kick our feet up on the couch and we watch television. This was to rest in him and find our rest in him. Jesus came and said, my yoke is easy. Come to me, you are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That is in the Hebrew word Sabbath or Shabbat, which means that he was to become our Sabbath rest. We were to find our rest in him. Now, I always give this picture of the cross. And if you were to take the 10 commandments and number them on the cross, oddly enough, the fourth commandment would hit the cross piece. Okay? You would find 1 through 10 and just number them, and even if you didn't try, and you just tried to figure out however big the cross is, however small it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, almost always lands right there at the cross piece. And when we examine the first 3 commandments, they have to do with our vertical relationship with God. When we look at this cross piece, we see that the Sabbath is the 4th commandment, and half of it is going towards our vertical relationship, and the other half shows us that the last 5 or below that 6 commandments have to do with our relationship with each other. So in order for us to maintain a balance between our relationship with God and our relationship with man, we have to take this Sabbath rest. Our horizontal relationship also helps our vertical relationship. So if we set aside time to rest in the Lord, in his word, and I am considered to be what you might call Shomer Shabbat. I don't work on Friday nights and Saturdays. I work 18-hour days. I'm really 24/6 is what I always tell people, is that I'm available 24/6, not 24/7. I no longer work. When I was a congregational rabbi, I did work Friday nights and Saturdays, but that was what the rabbi did. But I found that by taking this time to reflect, to contemplate, to rest, to nap, to find ways to not do my regular work, which for me is teaching, preaching, and studying. Studying is a part of my regular work. I spend hours, 10 hours of study for every hour of teaching that I present, and I present 3 different teachings a week. So there's a lot of study that goes into what I do, plus show preparation. But I don't do any show preparation. At 1 o'clock on Friday, when the Sabbath for me starts, that's the beginning of it, I bolt out of the studio and I'll come back in on Sunday. So I'm kind of very much on Israeli hours, where Israeli businesses close early on Friday afternoon. They're off Friday afternoon, and they don't return back to work till Sunday. So they have this preparation day, this preparation time, where they're getting ready, where they're preparing the meal. Then they have this Sabbath time together. All of Israel is like that. The stores are not open on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, and people find different ways. There is no legalism. You don't have to be in the synagogue. You can be on the beach. You can be on a picnic. You can go do these things, but everything you do unto the Lord. And you find that we've survived for 5,000 years by continuing this pattern, and we are the smallest nation in the world, 14,700,000 of us, but we've endured every test and trial. But for us, the Sabbath has become a very important part of our way of life. For the church, they too have a Sabbath, all right? It is the Lord's Day, and regardless of whether or not you do that in church, if you do it unto the Lord, you find that there is a way for you to separate yourself from the world, enter into the presence of God, which then equips you to have and maintain your vertical relationship, which is what Jesus says is the first greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength. And the second is to love your neighbor horizontally, love your neighbor as yourself. Paul talks about us being called into a ministry of reconciliation, that we're a new creation, and we are in that season. We've talked about this in sleep, that the person that went to bed is not the person that wakes up. The person that enters a Sabbath is not the one who exits the Sabbath. You are now renewed, refreshed, and you're created born again, if you will, in this experience of this Sabbath rest. So we stop being so busy and we take time out for the Lord. So that's kind of the approach to the Sabbath.
You know, people who are listening or who will listen are probably thinking or rolling their eyes like, you're talking to us about rest in the busiest season of the year. And I think from my perspective, this was intentional, because I think we need an interruption and a reality check. And why not do it during the most busy time of our year? And I think for some people, the idea might be, you know, okay, talk to me about this another time. I'm too busy to listen to you. And how could I possibly take one day off at this time of year and just chill? And I think we have to start with just this thought being planted in our mind that that is God's intention, not as a punishment, not as trying to make us run even faster the other 6 days, but there's some principle, I think, that happens. There's a reconnection, realignment with God when this idea of one day that is devoted, it can be devoted on the beach or the mountains or with family, but that is a cessation of work and toil, which somehow separates us from this, I think, which has become a curse of busyness. And so I just want to encourage people, don't tune out because we're talking about something that seems impossible in this season. And I think anything that seems impossible is an invitation to connect with God, because Amen. He is the God of the impossible. And it is impossible for so many people in this culture of busyness and in the season of busyness to even consider a Sabbath. And so this was on purpose. And I think it is an opportunity as we approach a new year. And I want to challenge all of our listeners because we all do. We think about the new year and we think about what am I going to do differently? What do I want to leave behind? What do I want to add into my life? And I think this idea of a Sabbath rest, to begin now and say, God, first of all, forgive me, because it is a command. And so when we've succumbed and come under this curse of busyness, we got to start with, God, please forgive me. Forgive me for working 24/7. Forgive me for being caught up. And I forgive myself. And then the next step is, God, help me. Because I don't think we can do this. I don't think we can obey any command of God without the grace of God to enable us. And so this is another place where we're going to need God's help, God's grace, to change our way of life, because it goes in utter, total opposition to the way of the world, which is run, 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 busy, busy, busy. And so I think to stop and say, God, forgive me. And number two, say, God, help me. That as I approach a new year, that I will approach it with an honoring and experience and entering into a life that includes rest. And we need God's help.
Faith, I will tell you an interesting story. In 1967, Truett Cathy opened the first Chick-fil-A in a suburb of Atlanta at Greenbrier Mall. He announced at that time that Chick-fil-A would only be open 6 days a week, that they were closing on Sunday. And even in 1967, there was an outcry from the McDonald's people, from all those that had already been established by then, long established chains like Burger King and all the other fast food restaurants. This new person was coming on the scene. He had this place called the Dwarf House that had been around for a number of years. In 1946, he started that, but it too was closed on Sunday. And he made the statement that it was going to be closed on Sunday in honor of the Lord's Day. And they said, you will fail. Blue laws in the South were now changing. Stores were open on Sunday. As the advent of Sunday openings continued and moved more towards a 24/7 model, he said, no, we will not change. Hobby Lobby did the same thing and said, no, we will not change. We will stand on our faith, and whatever the Lord provides, the Lord provides. Well, the number one top-rated fast food chain in America is Chick-fil-A. They are only open 6 days a week, not 7. Mm-hmm. They give all of their employees, all their corporate staff, all their store staff, the place is closed. They are taking a Sabbath rest, and it's not that your shift, it's everybody. The entire company is shut down, and it's become expected. It has become the norm. It has become something that's become a model, and while other companies are staying busy, and they're caught up in their busyness, our drive-thrus are open 24/7, we're busy, 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 the numbers say that Chick-fil-A is more profitable. Chick-fil-A is more effective. Chick-fil-A is more efficient. Chick-fil-A is a better model, but than busyness, because they're honoring of the Lord. Hobby Lobby, same way. They're closed on Sunday because the family is a family of faith. Now, you have other faith-based corporations, Publix, In-N-Out Burger. There are a number of other faith-based companies that set hours, but they are very insistent that employees take vacation time and that they use their vacation time, and in their they don't let you carry over. You got to take it. So they will not schedule you If you don't put in for it, you're going to find out, you're going to walk in one day and look at the schedule and see you're not scheduled for a week in the future. And they're going to say, why am I not scheduled for that week? Because you have vacation time, you need to use it. So it's important that we see that this theme does transcend the faith-based businesses in ensuring a time off scenario. And it has led to their success. The Publix, incredibly successful. Hobby Lobby, incredibly successful. Chick-fil-A, incredibly successful. All built around this model that they see that busyness does not necessarily mean profitability or effectiveness or quality for that matter.
And I mean, it's amazing that more companies aren't following this example, because the numbers show that it's not a loss of profitability, it's not a loss of customers, it's actually probably an increase, because you have to plan. If I'm going to go to Hobby Lobby, I got to do it on Saturday and not on Sunday, you know, for the weekend. So, but it's always been interesting to me, because I have many friends in the UK, and it's become a joke with us, because I'll contact them and I won't get an email back. And then a week later, I'll get an email and they say, oh, I was on holiday. And it's, I said, how do you get anything done in England? Because it seems like you're always on holiday. But I'm teasing them, and yet I realize the nation, UK, has a value for having people take a rest and a holiday. And so they have built in twice as many holidays as we do. Vacation times are 2 or 3, 4 times as much as entry-level vacation time in the U.S. And I mean, I think that we're reaching sort of the tipping point in this thing of rest from busyness, because medically, the statistics are in that are showing that if we're just drive, our body can't take it and our mind can't take it. There are studies that have shown, I mean, really interesting, of the benefit of just downtime for your brain. And this isn't sleep, it's not naps, it's just disconnecting from your list, from your busy, that things take place in the brain that the brain cannot do if it isn't disconnected, that parts of the brain light up when we just chill rather than go.
We're talking with Faith Blatchford, author of Winning the Battle for the Night, God's Plan for Sleep, Dreams, and Revelation. Are you a slave to your iPhone or to your Android or to your email or to a schedule that says you just have to be busy? Maybe even in ministry, you find yourself taking on every single invitation. The word no is not in your vocabulary, but are you wearing yourself not to the point of burnout? Because I believe that God has redemptive powers, and for those who are also called, He does restore and redeem our time, and He promises to do so. But for those of you that are not in ministry, and you're out there and you are looking at burnout, you're looking at inefficiencies, you're looking at accidents, are you too busy to take care of what's important? Are you allowing the urgent to outweigh the important and create a lifestyle of busyness? When we return from break, we're going to talk about how busyness impacts your ability to sleep, to disconnect, and to find a way to get the kind of rest where God can meet you, heal you, speak to you, reveal things to you, and minister to you as we win the battle for the night. We'll be right back. Shalom, I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and I've got a question for you. What do you think they're doing with your DNA? Oh, you know that 23andMe kit that you sent off, and you got back that report that told you you were Irish, you were French, you were Jewish? Wonder who's interested in that information. It's not like you've sent it off to a database with millions of other people and they can steal your identity. And who would really be interested in that information other than you? Well, maybe your friends and family, but there's one, yes, one who is so interested in your DNA that it would be something that would make you afraid. And that is Satan himself. Why would Satan be interested in your DNA? Because there is a Y chromosome marker that determines whether or not you are in the line of Aaron. That's right, the biblical line of Aaron the priest. That's because if the priesthood comes back and the high priest takes his role as the head of the Sanhedrin, they will be the ones to call for the return of Jesus. Well, what can they do with your DNA? Well, there are 40-plus countries weaponizing DNA today. And imagine if Satan could weaponize your DNA and use that Y chromosome marker to take out the line of the high priest, then Jesus doesn't come back. That is the plot behind the best-selling book, The Codus, now out in second edition on Kindle, $2.99, also available in paperback. This is a biblical thriller beyond comparison that's going to take you on an incredible journey to understand what they could do with your DNA. I also want to encourage you to visit our website, ignitingnation.com, and click on special offers. There you're going to find the yellow cover of this book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. We're going to take you on a journey in the Garden of Eden to the seed, the ground, all the way out to the fruit that reveals things of the natural that God is trying to reveal supernatural truths. Contained within these pages are 7 laws and 7 lessons within each law. They're going to take you on an incredible journey of understanding about the life you live and the fruit you bear. I want to encourage you to click on that yellow cover. We're going to ask for your email. Now, we won't send you spam because spam is not kosher, but we will send you the first chapter of this book. I want to encourage you to get 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. You can get it at Books A Million, wherever great Christian books are sold. Take this journey with me to the Tree of Life in the Garden of Eden and to the Tree of Life we see again at the River of Life. Get your copy today. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Faith Blatchford, author of Winning the Battle for the Night, God's Plan for Sleep, Dreams, and Revelation. Faith, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Eric.
Faith, as a side note, I wanted to direct people to faithblatchford.com. You have a special going on 4 CDs that are soaking CDs, sleeping CDs that are just extraordinary. And I wanted to make sure that people knew that it's a great holiday gift to give to someone, this entire package of a bundle of Winning the Battle for the Night, along with the CDs that you have created to go with it, that kind of set the mood, set the tone for an environment which you can sleep in. You can find that at faithblatchford.com. So Faith, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. You know, I just want to reiterate again to all the listeners who are listening now and who may listen, that if you tune in and you hear that we're talking about Sabbath and rest, that you don't tune out just because it's a busy season. And there's no condemnation. That's the culture we live in. But what we're trying to do is plant a seed and help us shift into connection with God's clock, God's timetable, rather than the world's clock. Because, you know, God put into us the circadian clock, which actually causes our body to identify when it's getting dark, sends a message to the melatonin factory, time to release melatonin. You know, God, like a good parent, sets the bedtime. My parents did. I hated it. I rebelled against it like most kids do. But I think this whole idea of Sabbath and rest is part of God as a good parent, knowing what our body needs for high performance. So this isn't condemning. This is encouraging, and it's a hopeful message. And I think one way that we can add to our rest menu is this whole idea of naps. And particularly when it's a busy season, I know most people aren't going to change their sleeping schedule right now. We can talk about that next month in preparation for the new year, but we can embrace this idea of naps. Now, if anybody's listening who knows me, they know naps were never part of my experience or even my vocabulary. I hated naps. My mother loved naps. She was 40 when I was born, and she needed a nap because I was a handful, and it was torture and torment. But recently, God has changed my understanding, radical change in my life, that I take naps. And it's not just for old people and babies. And the reason I know this is I've done research on naps. Big corporations like Google, they have nap rooms. They have nap pods, specially built chair beds that you kind of close yourself in like a pea pod, and you take a nap. And it's not something that's frowned upon. It's not something that you're looked upon as a wimp if you take a nap. It's encouraged. And Google isn't the only corporation that has nap rooms. And big name corporate people, big name athletes take naps. Now, I don't know how many NBA fans we have who are watching, but professional basketball players, one of the greatest living basketball players right now, his name is LeBron James. He takes naps. Now, if the big guy, and he's enormous, takes naps and isn't ashamed of it and isn't teased about it, I think we can all investigate naps and look at it as something that might be beneficial, particularly in this busy season, to investigate and maybe just set aside 10 minutes. You know, there's something now called NASA naps, because in the beginning of the space program, with astronauts going into space where you're basically on a routine, very intense work, they discovered that lack of sleep could cause problems. The Challenger space shuttle explosion actually was part of the reason for that problem was lack of sleep. So NASA has incorporated naps into the space program, and it's called a NASA nap. And it doesn't have to be, you know, sleeping all day. It can be a 10-minute power nap. It can also be an hour nap. It can be 90 minutes. Each one of those time periods, they've done a lot of study on naps. And so 10 minutes has an effect, 60 minutes has another effect, 90 minutes has another effect, which I'll share in just a minute. But, you know, Eric, you and I were talking about naps, and you have been a napper for a long time.
I have. Throughout my entire career, I have been a devoted power napper. When I leave the studio before I do my nighttime teachings, and I travel out of town during the weeknights to other cities to teach at night for another program we have called Revealing the Bible, I go home and let my little dog out, and she knows that that's our time to lay down on the couch, and she does that with me, and she takes a nap right there with me, and I will lay down. She expects it. I'll close my eyes, and I would deliberately keep my eyes closed whether I go to sleep or not go to sleep. I will do it for 1 hour, and in that time it allows me to clear a lot of chatter and clutter from having 3 one-hour live interviews. There's lots of overflow of dialogue, allows me to disconnect from one set of stimuli, go to a neutral place, and then I can connect to the teaching that I have to do that night, which is on a completely different subject, and using completely different tools gives me the ability to be awake, to drive every night to a different location and to speak to a different group. We record those for television, so I have to be sharp, look sharp, sound sharp. I can't be sleepy, droopy, grumpy, Doc, or any of the seven dwarfs. I have to be fully on, and I do that 4 days a week, along with 5 days of regular television. So in order to keep that schedule, and I've always been a highly productive, highly energetic individual, but for 45 years, I've been taking power naps. And when I was an exec at AT&T or an exec at Hewlett-Packard, if my lights were off and you walked into my office and saw my feet on my desk, me leaning back in the chair and asleep, I would tell people who worked for me, you just walk out and in 10, 15 minutes, I'll be up and around, but that is my time. You know, you can go out to lunch, you can do what you want. My time is my nap time, and that's what I'm going to do. The chairman of the board was told that if she's looking for me during that nap time, that I will be taking a nap. And that unless it's an emergency, that I'll be taking the nap. And that was shared with a very well-known CEO of a very large corporate Fortune 50 company. But I was known as a napper. And so people would walk in, they'd see me, and I didn't care if there was drool. I didn't care if I snored. I did not care. This was something I needed, my body needed, so that I could have the stamina to be able to go through corporate meetings and then to evening corporate events and entertain till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and then still be able to get back into the office at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was part of this system that I established and I still use today, and I'm still just as productive in what my geriatric doctor would say is, when do you plan to retire? And my response is, there's no retirement in the Bible. I have no plans to retire.
So, I mean, how did you start napping? I mean, did somebody suggest it to you? Was it, you think God gave you the secret to success, or what sparked this? Because you're kind of a man out of season in the sense that napping 45 years ago was not considered something that an executive would do.
I have a 3-word answer for you.
Yes.
I was sleepy.
Well, but it was courageous to do that.
Well, you know, I broke the facial hair barrier at AT&T. I worked there as an executive with a ponytail and a beard. I kind of went against the norm, against a lot of the standards of corporate America, dress for success and gamesmanship and all those things back in that time. I was sleepy, so I took a nap.
And, you know, that's really important, because I think that what has happened today with this culture of busyness, that people do get sleepy and they reach for Red Bull instead of saying, okay, I'm going to take even a 10-minute nap. And this is the thing, that the truth is that it is okay to yield when the body says, hey, I'm sleepy. And rather than powering through, instead of powering through with Red Bull, let's take a power nap. And there's permission to nap in this society. And that's something I think to communicate to people is, it is okay to take a nap. And you have reaped the benefits of this, and my hat's off to you, because that's an incredible testimony of something that has benefited. I mean, who knows where you would be today and what you would be doing if you hadn't listened to your body and not to maybe criticism or snickers from people in your office. And what if you hadn't taken a nap for 45 years?
Well, you know, it's not statistical, a survey of one, but I have no blood pressure problems, no heart disease, no cancer, no diabetes, I take no medications whatsoever on a prescription basis. I have no ailments. I have perfectly normal cholesterol levels, perfectly normal heart enzyme levels, liver enzyme levels. I have no physical issues whatsoever. I have stamina. I have alertness. I will tell you that as part of Medicare, they require you once a year to go get a physical, and part of that is to test your mental acuity to see whether or not you are in a pre-dementia state or if there's any cognitive loss. And this last year in March, I went for my annual required, otherwise they haunt you. They force you to go, they want you checked out. And he said to me during the interview, I'm going to tell you 3 words at the start of this interview, and sometime later after we go through a number of other tests and other things, I'm going to ask you what those 3 words are, and you're going to recite them back to me. And so I said, okay, tell me the 3 words. When it came time, when we were finished with this, about 20 minutes later, he said, by the way, what were those 3 words? And my answer to him was, they're the same 3 words you asked me last year. And he just looked at me and he said, you know, you're right. I have not changed the words in 5 years. I guess there's no problem with your mental acuity. Now, you know, I was making a joke of it that they were the words he asked me last year to let him know that I had not lost anything. But it was very clear that the balance of rest, of giving my mind, because I do read 3 books a day. I do conduct 3 live interviews a day. I read and study the Bible for hours of every day in both Hebrew and in English. So my brain has to be pretty active and pretty sharp, and I need that break. But to give him that answer was proof positive that there's no short term, no long term, there's nothing. Now, I will tell you that we did a special on the aging brain, and standing is one of the other great solutions to preventing dementia or some of the illnesses of mental acuity. And that is because it elongates the cells of the brain the longer you stand. So people who are totally sedentary, who sit all the time and don't stand for 5 minutes out of every hour. They're not asking you to stand for 12 hours a day, but 5 minutes out of every 12 hours, out of every hour, if you stand, you elongate your brain cells, and therefore you reduce your risk of dementia or Alzheimer's, which is really quite interesting. But there are ways that we can do this, and rest is one of the ways that you also stem the aging process. I know plenty of people my age who have bypass surgery, pacemakers, many illnesses. I thank God for youth and for youthful approach and for youthful body. And I thank the Lord for all of that. But He's made me nap.
Well, I thought it would be good to give some pointers, suggestions on how to take a nap, the perfect nap. And so I have 8 points, very simple, that I wanted to identify for our listeners. And the first one is decide if you need a nap. And this is part of the listening to your body and listening to your mind. You know, sometimes when your mind just says, that's probably a good time to shut it down and go take a little power nap. The second is choose the time frame that you're going to nap. Identify it. You know, the 10-minute nap is the thing that really rejuvenates. It increases alertness and energy. Just 10 minutes will do that. You don't have to set aside 60 minutes. 60-minute nap actually is the thing that helps in terms of memory, cognitive memory, acuity, in terms of remembering facts and places and dates. It will cause your brain to actually be renewed, and you'll work better in the afternoon after the nap. And then the next time period is the 90-minute nap. Now, the 60-minute nap, you'll feel a little groggy and you'll have to work past the grogginess. 10-minute nap, you won't feel groggy. You'll just get right up. Because some people say, well, I don't want to take a nap because then I'm just wasted for the rest of the day. Well, take a 10-minute nap. The hour nap, you may feel a little groggy. It's okay because there's still benefit. So push past that. The 90-minute, yes, you may feel groggy, but what the 90-minute nap is going to do, it gives you enough time for a full REM cycle of sleep, which is where creativity, innovation, some of those, world-changing ideas that you might get are going to be deposited to you even in the middle of the day. So decide what time frame you want for the nap. It's really important. Otherwise, it's kind of, you're afraid, oh, it's going to be too long or I'm not going to be able to function. You decide. And the third step is set the alarm. Because if you don't, you're actually not going to be able to rest because you're going to think, oh, I'm going to sleep too long, I'll miss an appointment. And I know it sounds really basic, but set an alarm. Don't think, well, I'll wake up in 10 minutes. No, you won't. Trust me. I've tried that. I'm just going to lie back here and just for 10 minutes and, an hour later. The fourth point is eliminate noise. And if it's at the office or wherever it is, invest in even noise canceling headphones or earpieces so that you can literally tune out the noise, because it will, even if you're really sleepy, noise is going to keep you from getting into deep sleep. So eliminate noise. Number 5, eliminate light as much as you can, because the body does much better when it's as dark as possible. And you think, well, I can't afford to do that. Well, get some really nice eye shades that you can put on. They have them now. They have different fragrances. They have different textures. I mean, invest in yourself, okay? If it's noise canceling headphones, if it's really expensive eye shades, or even if it's in your home or your office and you can do it, get some blackout curtains. You think, for a nap? Yes, you are worth it. You're worth it.
I agree.
And the next is keep a cool room. And sometimes this is difficult if you're in a corporate setting and you don't have a thermostat in your office. Well, you can invest in a fan that is a cooling fan. You can invest in some kind of a neck scarf that will cool your body temperature down, because it's important, whether it's at night or even for a nap, that you are sleeping in 65 to 68 degree temperature. So temperature. And the next is actually lie down, even if you have to lie down on the floor, because your muscles won't actually relax if you're sitting in a chair or even just with your feet up. The body needs to be actually prone. Take a pillow to work. I have a friend who has a big desk, and he actually lies down under his desk, and then nobody can disturb him. So that's number 7. And number 8 is, as much as possible, clear your mind. of the things that you were working on or the things that are troubling you. And I know that seems like a tall order, and that's where whether you put on music, and Eric mentioned the sleep CDs that I've just released, that's a good way. You may have favorite music that is soothing to you. Try the sleep music CDs if you don't have something, but to enable your mind to disconnect from all of the lists and the busyness of the day. So those are 8 simple tips for having a perfect nap.
So the first one is to decide if you need one. I found myself sleepy. That told me I needed one. Choose between 20 and 90 minutes. Anything in between will leave you a little groggy, so try to make sure that you find your perfect. And you will find your perfect amount of time as to what brings you the most refreshment. Set an alarm if you need one because you have an appointment or you just want to get into a routine and a habit. You'll ultimately wind up training yourself to wake up at a certain time, but in the beginning it's always good to have that prompt. Eliminating noise is always extremely important. Blocking light. I work under 700,000 lumens of light a day. My home is very dark, very subdued. I work at low light because I work 3 hours under such bright lights. And for me, it gives my eyes the chance to rest. And we don't realize that fluorescent lights and LED lights and all these other lights have an impact on our brain waves and on our ability to perceive and to relax. It creates an environment. There are studies shown as to what creates a more productive environment, a more wide awake audience. There's ways Las Vegas pumps more oxygen into the room to keep people more energized. There's all kinds of environmental manipulation that goes on where you need to take control back of that environment. So cooling the room, it's much easier to sleep in a cool room. I do this at night with a night setback thermostat that the temperature drops during the time I'm already asleep. It keeps me asleep. It keeps me from waking. It keeps me from getting overheated in a bed, which sometimes people wake up with night sweats or a wet jersey, and they find themselves that, they were comfortable when they went to bed, but overnight you're capturing your body heat underneath an insulation. It gets warmer under there, and setting back your thermostat helps. Lying down is very important. It takes the stress off your muscles and clearing your mind. And, this is where God says, seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all the rest of this will be given unto you. This is the time to find that comforting scripture to play over in your head, the one that brings you calm, the one that brings you rest, and certainly music. If you're a music person, soaking CDs, your sleep CDs are certainly a wonderful environment. I actually use, because I like to keep a home, I have dry skin, so I use aroma therapy and aroma diffusers to use frankincense and myrrh as the humidifying scent in my home. So the whole home smells like frankincense and myrrh, not a very noticeable, very subtle, but for me it's the smell of the Holy Spirit. So I create that environment that makes it feel like I'm entering in to God's presence. All these because Faith Blatchford wants you to win the battle for the night. She wants you to flow in God's plan for sleep, dreams, and revelation, and restoration. To serve the God of restoration, you have to be active in being a participant in God's plan of restoration for you. So He says to you, be still and know that I am God. Faith, we will not be meeting with you on the last Monday of the December due to the holiday. So we want to wish you and your family a very happy and healthy New Year. And we will see you back here on the last Monday, on the fourth Monday of January. I believe it is the fourth Monday. Let me double check. It's actually No, it's the 28th. Yeah, it's the fourth Monday of the month. The 28th of January will be the next time we see you. So until we see you, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you, be gracious unto you, and may the Lord turn his face toward you and give you his peace. In the name of the Prince of Peace, may God bless you always. We bid you shalom.
Thank you.
God bless. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.